Dallas, if you look at his stats throughout his career, even if you ignore this year, which would be fair, I guess, he has had one really good year in 2006. The other 3 years of his career were average, very, very average. So you look at that 1 year. What happened? Mike Martz happened. I don't know if you guys, how many of you guys like basketball, but if you guys know who Mike D'Antoni is, he runs a very frantic and fast-paced offensive system in basketball. He coached the Phoenix Suns, and now he coaches the Knicks. And basically what he does is his offense tries to get off a shot in 7 seconds or less. They shoot a lot of three-pointers. And what happens in this system is players look way, way, way better than they are. You can have average players scoring 25 points a night, and you can have good players looking like Hall of Famers. Like Steve Nash is not half as good as he looked under Mike D'Antoni, but because this Mike D'Antoni's offense has people shooting so much and shooting so many three-pointers, their stats blow up. I think the same thing happened with Roy Williams. He played under Mike Martz, who likes to throw deep a lot. He runs a very insane, fast-paced offense. He boosted his stats well beyond his actual talent level. So, I'm just saying, he's a talented individual, and in the right hands he could become very good. But that 1 year could easily be an aberration. Just talking. I guess the other thing people are talking about is Pac-Man, who, it's like, I've pretty much forgotten at this point he existed, but it would be unfair to not realize that his numbers last year were secretly pretty good. He did not make an impact. He was not a playmaker this year for Dallas, which was kind of what they needed. But his yards per attempt allowed on the year was something like 5. So he was playing very well as a defensive back. You might have not noticed, but it's the truth. Just felt like bringing that up. Wade Phillips and the coaching staff. It looks like the entire coaching staff is going to stay. Because Jerry Jones doesn't want to admit that he's wrong more than anything. He's at the root of all of this, which it's not that surprising to me, but even Shango can readily admit that. Here's my opinion on the coaching staff. Wade Phillips, I don't think he's going to be winning any Super Bowls anytime soon. I've never really liked Wade Phillips. I've never thought that a Wade Phillips-led team could go all the way. And a lot of people make the comparison to Wade Phillips and Tony Dungy. They say, well, Tony Dungy is as laid back as Wade Phillips, and Tony Dungy won a Super Bowl. Sometimes people bring up Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs was very laid back, and he led 3 Super Bowl victories in Washington. The thing is, I'll use Tony Dungy as the main example here. The main difference here is the Indianapolis Colts under Tony Dungy love to play under him. Tony Dungy doesn't need to yell at them, get in their face, tell them you better listen to me, you better do what I say, because they love and respect him so much, he can afford to be laid back. And they're not going to get out of line, they're not going to get undisciplined, they're not going to do anything dumb, because every player they bring into that organization loves and respects Dungy. Dungy does not need to be the disciplinarian because his team never calls for it. For example, Ed Johnson. Last year this guy went undrafted in the draft even though he was very talented because he had a lot of trouble in his history. The Colts signed him out of undrafted free agency and basically said if you screw up once, you're gone. He played out the whole season. He was a very good player for them. He stuffed the run. He contributed some pass rushing skills. And he was an important part of a team that did go 13-3. He screwed up once in the offseason. He was out. They're not even going to fool around with stuff like that. They're not even going to try. They're just going to say, okay, you're out. And they needed him. They needed his talents as a player, but they were just like, get out of here. Same with like Mike Vanderjagt. They kept him around a little longer than I thought because he was being, idiot kicker. But they did let him go, even though at the time they let him go, he was one of the greatest kickers in NFL history. And guess who picked him up while we're at it? Dallas did cut him the next year, but that was because he sucked, not because he was an idiot kicker. And then you look at the Dallas Cowboys. This team needs to be disciplined. They have too many penalties. They don't, they're not focused. They do a lot of stupid things. This Dallas Cowboys team needs to be disciplined. So it's like Wade Phillips is in a position where he needs to be able to get into the face of his players and fire them up. And he doesn't do it because it's not his style. Now, if you put Wade Phillips on the Indianapolis Colts, it might work. If you gave Tony Dungy to the Dallas Cowboys, it probably wouldn't work. That's their style. But the point is, the way the teams are done, it works for the Colts. It doesn't work for the Cowboys. So that's what I think about Wade. Rest of the coaching staff, the special teams coach, he's already gone. Good riddance. From the perspective of a Cowboys fan, good riddance. I say get Brian Stewart out of there. What does he contribute? What does Brian Stewart do well for the Cowboys? Nothing? Yeah, I'd pretty much say nothing. I mean, I sure don't hear his name very much. Jason Garrett, it really, really looks like Tony Sperano was the main reason why Dallas's offense was so good last year. When I see Jason Garrett, I see no creativity, no ability to adjust to the situation, no ability to use his players to the best of their potential. And Terrell Owens is not what he used to be, but he is at his best when you put him in motion at the line of scrimmage. If you put him in motion, you can't jam him at the line. It's a lot harder to get jams on him. That's when he's at his best. And T.O. is not going in motion very much this year. And that was a big reason why his numbers were down, even though he is not the player he used to be. So, at this point, I do not think Jason Garrett is a very good offensive coordinator or a future head coach, but it looks like they're all going to stay. Final thing I want to talk about here real quick is the leadership issue that I believe is at the very heart. Now, we know the coaching staff doesn't really have any leaders. That's one thing, but even if your coach is a leader, you need a player leader. If you look at the most successful teams in the last 10 years, the Patriots were indisputably led by Tom Brady through all their successful years. This year, I don't really know who they had. I think maybe it was Teddy Bruschi, maybe Matt Castle after he started to play better became the leader. The Colts, it's always indisputably been Peyton Manning, and defensively they have Bob Sanders. The Buccaneers won a Super Bowl this decade, so you look at them, it was definitely Derek Brooks and Rondé Barber. There was no question there. The Steelers, James Ferrier, and the Giants. Eli became a leader in the playoffs for the offense. Defensively, it was always Antonio Pierce. That was easy. But you look at this Cowboys team, there's nothing wrong with not being a leader. Like Terrell Owens and Tony Romo and DeMarcus Ware and Jason Witten, those guys, they're not leaders. Jason Witten and DeMarcus Ware are great players and great people. They have the right mindset to be a football player, but they're not leaders. Romo and Owens are obviously not leaders. They're just great players, but they cannot lead. So that's definitely an issue. Offensively, I don't think the Cowboys have any leaders. I mean, they have a trash talker in Patrick Creighton, but that's not a leader. I don't think too many people respect Patrick Creighton right now because he's not that good of a player, and he talks a game that his game cannot, and he talks a game that he can't cash. Defensively, maybe Brady James is a leader. I hear some people say he is, some people say he isn't. I'd say that's Zach Thomas was supposed to be a leader. I guess that didn't work out too well because I didn't see any leadership from the Cowboys defense this year. Roy Williams used to kind of sort of be that, but he's not anymore. Darren Woodson was so many years ago, but he's long gone. Or Rod Woodson, I can't remember which Woodson that is. Terrence Newman's just a player, not a leader, and that that's about all I got to say about the Cowboys. So, you Cowboys fans, let me know what you think about all this. I went on for a long time, but I'm done.